So we have some breaking news when it comes to tomorrow night's Hard to Kill main event, the 6-man tag team main event, because it's just been announced. This is breaking in the last couple of minutes or so. Impact Wrestling have announced that Alex Shelley is out of tomorrow night's Impact Wrestling Hard to Kill main event. He will be replaced by the current TNA World Heavyweight Champion Moose. So therefore, tomorrow night's main event for Hard to Kill now will consist of the AEW World Champion Kenny Omega teaming up with the Impact Tag Team Champions, the Good Brothers, Doc Gallows and Karl Anderson, to face off against the new team of Impact World Champion Rich Swann, Chris Sabin, and now Moose replacing Alex Shelley. Impact Wrestling have just announced this over the last couple of minutes or so. We don't have a ton of details, but Impact Wrestling have released the following press release. So let's read into this and try and get some information of the details as to why Alex Shelley will not be at tomorrow night's Hard to Kill event. They have released this statement saying, quote, "There is a huge change to tomorrow night's industry-shaking Hard to Kill pay-per-view main event. Impact Wrestling World Champion Rich Swann and Chris Sabin will now team with Moose as they battle All Elite Wrestling World Champion Kenny Omega and Impact Tag Team Champions the Good Brothers, Doc Gallows and Karl Anderson. Moose replaces Sabin's Motor City Machine Guns tag team partner Alex Shelley, who informed Impact Wrestling late last night that due to unavoidable circumstances, he will be unable to travel to Nashville for Hard to Kill." Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President Scott D'Amore said, quote, "When we got the news from Alex that there was no question what we needed to do, extraordinary circumstances call for extraordinary measures, I personally contacted Moose and he accepted the match immediately. I know Rich Swann in particular has his issues with Moose, but this is time to put personal issues aside and egos aside too." He also went on to say, "Hard to Kill is a huge event for Impact Wrestling and a historic one for professional wrestling in general. Impact Wrestling needs to put our best foot forward. Moose fits that bill. He is a physical specimen, a 5'-tall athlete, and has proven himself to be a world-class professional wrestler. Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers will have their hands even more full now as they step into the ring with the Impact World Champion Rich Swann, Impact Original Chris Sabin, and the TNA World Heavyweight Champion Moose." Now, Moose has also commented on this. He downplayed the dynamic of teaming with Swann, who is 6'5" the 6'5" powerhouse is widely expected to challenge for the World Championship in the near future. He said, quote, "I played alongside plenty of guys that I didn't like in football." D'Amore added that Swann had yet to be informed of the change. He said, quote, "Rich is on a plane right now and his phone is off. I'm going to try and meet him at the airport for what I can't imagine is going to be a pleasant conversation, but Hard to Kill's main event is set. Rich Swann, Chris Sabin and Moose will go at it with Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers." So this is, shocking news. It really is shocking news. Very interesting to say the least, but certainly something I didn't see coming, nobody saw coming. There's so much to get into there, really, isn't there? First of all, the fact that Alex Shelley can't be there, it screams that something is happening or something has happened. Now, I don't want to speculate too much as it comes to test results, COVID. Of course, people can jump to those conclusions, a reason why he can't travel. I'm not necessarily sure that it's fair to speculate on any of that right now. All that we know currently is Alex Shelley is not able to travel to Nashville for tomorrow's Hard to Kill pay-per-view. Therefore, he is unable to compete at tomorrow night's Hard to Kill pay-per-view. Now, what does that mean for the TV tapings going forward over the course of the next week or so? That would imply to me that not only is Alex Shelley not going to be at Hard to Kill, but he's also not going to be on any episodes of Impact Wrestling for at least the next 6 or 7 weeks, or maybe even longer. We don't know how many episodes of Impact they're going to be taping over the course of the next few days, so that's something to consider there as well. So Alex Shelley's not going to be there. He said that there is, let's find the quote once again, that there was no possible way that they can travel or something like that. Here we go. "Due to unavoidable circumstances, he would be unable to travel to Nashville for Hard to Kill." So again, they're purposely leaving that vague. And I would assume that that is legitimate, that legitimately Alex Shelley couldn't attend Hard to Kill tomorrow night. But what's interesting about this is that, so they're saying there that Alex Shelley is unable to travel to Hard to Kill, but then as you get through the press release, as you get to the bottom of it, it suddenly turns into a storyline. It suddenly turns into a work, because they're now saying that, obviously they're playing up the Moose not being able to, well, the Moose and Rich Swann dynamic. Of course, they've been kind of feuding the last few weeks. Of course, Moose has been feuding with Willie Mack, but at the end of Genesis in that I Quit match, Moose actually lost the match, but Rich Swann came to the ring and told Moose to stop beating down Willie Mack, and that if he spared his best friend, he would give him a world championship opportunity. So it looks like they're merging those two storylines. So This is very interesting because I can see two schools of thought here. Essentially, I can see one group of people saying, obviously Alex Shelley's come down with something. Obviously, we knew that Alex Shelley was still dealing with a neck injury. Have we actually seen Alex Shelley back in the ring yet since that neck injury? I'm not sure if we have. That could possibly say that maybe that neck injury hasn't fully cleared itself. That could be a possibility there. But then I suppose Alex Shelley has been physical over the course of the last few weeks on Impact, and that was back in November when he was having those brawls with the likes of the Good Brothers and Kenny Omega. Obviously, I know we could do smoke and mirrors there, but nevertheless, I'm not sure that might be the school of thought. And then I can see the other side of people saying, well, maybe this was always the plan. Maybe this was always the plan. We mentioned it several times when we've spoke about Moose recently on the channel here, and this Moose and Rich Swann storyline that seems to be running parallel to this AEW and Impact Wrestling storyline. It kind of felt like that Rich Swann was kind of feuding with two people at once, even though Moose was facing Willie Mack. Rich Swann was still integral to all that because, of course, Rich Swann is the best friend of Willie Mack, and Moose was doing it all to get a future opportunity at the Impact World Championship. And then on the other side of things, so you've got that Moose-Rich Swann dynamic here. On the other side of things, running parallel, you had Kenny Omega infiltrating Impact Wrestling, calling himself the real world champion. We knew we were going to have this match at Hard to Kill, which essentially is world champion versus world champion. We know Kenny Omega, because of other reports, is going to be headlining other Impact Wrestling events in the future, possibly competing for the Impact World Championship. He's called himself a collector of titles, so it felt like Rich Swann was competing with both Kenny, or feuding with both Kenny Omega, and potentially feuding with Moose. And I mentioned when I spoke about Genesis, and I mentioned when I spoke about the whole Moose and Rich Swann dynamic of, it felt odd, because Moose kind of had, Rich Swann had two World Championship challenges. That felt very strange at the time, and maybe it was all of work. Maybe this was the plan all together to eventually put Moose into this main event scene at Hard to Kill. I mean, it felt odd anyway, frankly. It felt odd anyway that Moose didn't have a match for Hard to Kill. Lots of people were saying, why is that Moose versus Willie Mack match scheduled for Genesis, and why was it not scheduled for Hard to Kill? It's an I Quit match. It's a main event match. I know obviously being on an Impact Plus event, headlining it gives it a bigger spotlight maybe, but I mean, it's a pay-per-view. You only have 4 of them a year. You would think he would put Moose versus Willie Mack on Hard to Kill. So I could certainly see a school of thought of people saying maybe this was always the plan. You know, you had Rich Swann basically feuding with Moose and Kenny Omega at the same time, and Moose didn't have a match scheduled for Hard to Kill. Maybe this was the plan the whole time. And if that is the case, if it is the case that Moose being added into this match was always the plan for the whole time, then I think that's quite disappointing, really, because I don't want to get into the avenue of, for weeks and weeks and weeks, teasing a match, advertising a match that you never intended to deliver. And that school of thought, that point there, makes me think that this isn't something that was planned. Because I don't think, or at least I would hope that Impact wouldn't do that. I hope that Impact wouldn't falsely advertise a main event for weeks and weeks and weeks and then deliver something different. I think a lot of people would be upset by that. I think a lot of fans would be upset by that. Look, does Moose being added into this match, does that stop people from ordering the pay-per-view tomorrow? Does that stop people from watching? Of course it doesn't. Does it hurt the match? I think some people would say it will, and then that's no disservice to Moose, that's no disrespect to Moose, but I think a lot of people were very excited to see the Motor City Machine Guns in the same ring with Kenny Omega. I think a lot of people were excited to see the team of Rich Swann and the Motor City Machine Guns face off against Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers. It really did kind of feel like, even though the Good Brothers are with Impact, it kind of did feel like Impact versus AEW, if you will. And the fact that Alex Shelley isn't in there now, I think is going to be, to a lot of people, a tremendous disappointment. Does it make it a worse match? I mean, maybe. Is Alex Shelley a better worker than Moose? I would say so. I mean, that's very easy to say. Moose isn't as good in the ring as Alex Shelley. Does it make it overall a bigger match? I mean, you've got technically 3 champions, I suppose, and they're singles champions. Of course, you've got the Impact Tag Team champions as well. To me, without having Alex Shelley in there, it does feel like a smaller match, I think. And that's me personally, being a fan of the Motor City Machine Guns, being a fan of what they've done in Impact and their history, being essentially Impact Originals, multiple-time tag team champions, facing off against the current tag team champions, sharing a ring with Kenny Omega. Not having Alex Shelley in there right now, to me, does feel like a smaller match. It does feel like a smaller match. And I'm sure when it comes to this, look, this is going to rumble on, and it kind of feels like every time we have an Impact Wrestling pay-per-view, we have some kind of drama of something that doesn't go ahead, or something that doesn't happen, or something that was advertised and doesn't come through in the end. So this is almost par for the course again when it comes to Impact. I think to me, when I did see that announcement, first of all, I was shocked, and I felt like it was a big story, so obviously we got straight on here and we're doing this video now, but it does feel like a bit of a disappointment. I will be honest. It does feel like a bit of a disappointment that Alex Shelley's not involved, because I was, like everyone, I was very excited for the dynamic of having the Motor City Machine Guns in there with a Kenny Omega, having the Motor City Machine Guns in there with the Good Brothers, and obviously the dynamic of AEW versus Impact, 2 world champions in there as well. It does feel quite disappointing, and now the discussion is going to be, like I mentioned earlier, was this planned or not? And that's probably the problem with pro wrestling, is that we never really truly believe what we read, because we've been conditioned as fans to not believe anything and assume that everything is a work. I just think that press release that Impact Wrestling have released there is legitimacy sort of weaved in with a bunch of storyline and a bunch of working. It feels like they maybe, I would suspect, and again I don't know because this is just breaking over the last few minutes and I really don't know the situation with it right now, so we'll find out more in the coming days. But if I had to try and speculate as to what was happening right now, and maybe that I shouldn't do that, maybe I should wait for the facts, but if I had to try and guess as to what was happening right now, I would suspect that probably Alex Shelley, for whatever reason, can't make the pay-per-view. And we're not going to speculate on why that is or why isn't that, and why can't he be in Nashville for the pay-per-view. For whatever reason, he can't be in the pay-per-view. And I would suspect they go, right, if it is a case of Alex Shelley and his neck, maybe they didn't book Moose in for a match for the pay-per-view because of that reason. If Alex Shelley isn't ready, if he can't make it, we put in Moose. That's why Moose didn't have the match. I think maybe that might be the reason there. So they decide, okay, Alex Shelley, they leave it. Alex Shelley, he goes to the doctor or the physician, whoever, says, you know what, he can't make it. He can't do this match. They go, okay. Moose comes in. They already have the storyline kind of planned out. That's why they were doing the Moose thing at the same time. When it comes to Willie Mack and Rich Swann, that's why they were doing that on TV. And they can slot Moose right in there. They have the storyline ready to go, and they just weave it right in. I think maybe that's the most realistic scenario. I would really hope that this wasn't the plan all from the beginning, because I just don't think that's right. But I don't think Impact would do that. I don't think they would do that, because I think the blowback of falsely advertising something is just something that they wouldn't want to do when they're in such a big spotlight at the moment, and they've got a rise in viewership on Access TV and Twitch, and they've got more eyeballs on the product coming this weekend. Of course, this is a very hyped up pay-per-view. Lots of people are very excited for it. I just don't think Impact would falsely advertise it. And I mean, I might be wrong. I mean, we might do a video tomorrow saying, you know what, it was all part of the plan. I would suspect that this might have been something that Impact was aware of, for maybe even going all the way back to those TV tapings. I mentioned Alex Shelley's neck injury. And I would assume that they maybe thought, you know what, he might be cleared by then. If not, we don't book Moose. We do the Moose storyline anyway, because we're going to do the Genesis event. And if it doesn't pay out that Alex Shelley's ready, we can put Moose in. I would suspect that's probably the most likely scenario there. Obviously, we're in a pandemic right now. Obviously, people are going to speculate on that. As I mentioned time and time again, for anyone that tested positive during this pandemic, it's not for us to know. It's for Alex Shelley to release if he wants to release. It's people's private medical records. So I don't think we deserve to have any more information about anything like that. But it certainly is surprising when we're, just over 24 hours away from the pay-per-view going on the air. It's a bit chaotic, to say the least. And it's certainly, I would think, something that Impact hoped wouldn't happen and didn't happen. Because this is a massive, massive main event. It's a huge main event, and it's one of the biggest main events they've put on in a long time, and certainly some of the most eyeballs they have on the product at the time. Now, I was actually going to film a predictions video today, but we might have to move that till tomorrow now because of this news and try and digest what is going on here. But it wouldn't change my prediction for this match. I mentioned before that I really did feel that the Good Brothers and Kenny Omega would win this match anyway, because I just don't see having their debut match, or especially Kenny Omega's debut match in Impact, that he would lose a match. I think you've just got this team back together. They're a dominant faction. It doesn't make any sense for them to lose their first match. It makes the most sense for them to win and continue to dominate in Impact and AEW going forward. So that to me doesn't make any sense. If anything, the fact that Moose is now involved in this match for me makes it even more likely that Rich Swann's team will lose, and it makes it even more likely that you have an out for Rich Swann to get pinned in this match. I think Chris Sabin could obviously take the pinfall, and he might. but I think potentially you could have a scenario now where Moose ditches his team, or Moose spears Rich Swann, and then this allows Kenny Omega to get the pinfall. Then he's pinned the Impact World Champion, and then we can move on to potentially a Kenny Omega versus Rich Swann match, or a Rich Swann versus Moose match if Kenny Omega doesn't do any more matches, although I don't think that's going to be the case. So there are certainly a lot of variables right now, and it certainly is a breaking story, and as I mentioned, there's no doubt we'll hear more about it over the course of the next 24, 48 hours. If and when we do, of course, we'll do videos here on the channel talking about it. But just to recap, Alex Shelley is out of tomorrow night's Hard to Kill main event due to unforeseen travel circumstances. He is unable to travel to Nashville, therefore he is unable to participate in tomorrow's Hard to Kill main event. Instead, it will be Rich Swann teaming up with Chris Sabin and the TNA World Heavyweight Champion Moose to go up against AEW World Champion Kenny Omega and the Impact Tag Team Champions, the Good Brothers, Doc Gallows and Karl Anderson, in the main event. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on this breaking news about the change of the Hard to Kill main event tomorrow? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, Hard to Kill. We're going to be doing a ton of Hard to Kill stuff across the channel over the next course of a few days. So get involved in the comments below in the community. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. It really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.